Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray, your weekly fix of ancient warfare-related material to escape from your everyday lives. Now, of course, what I do here is I attempt to answer questions from viewers, listeners, readers, writers, anyone who asks me a question. You can send me an email. You can comment on one of the previous videos or podcasts, and they'll get to me. You can send me a postcard, PO Box 222, Belfield, Belfield, 2191, Australia, New South Wales, Australia. That will get to me. And of course, what I'll try and do is answer your questions and hopefully not go down a rabbit hole, which today's question absolutely sent me down. So thank you to Dave, who sent this question in. In fact, he's done two. So his question is, I wonder if it would be possible at some point to do casts on either Sertorius's rebellion in Spain and how his Roman troops differed from the classical late Republic types. That's not what I'll be dealing with today. Or a second cast could be on, come on, brain. I tried to practice this. Syagrius, there we are, and the Kingdom of Soissons. And it might be of interest to your listeners. Well, I hope so. It certainly sent me down a very deep rabbit hole talking about the Kingdom of Soissons. Now, Soissons is, or the Kingdom of Soissons was the wrong term because there was never a king. There's a whole very deliberate aspect to what happens in northern Gaul at the end of the Roman Empire in the late 5th century AD. But it's become known as the Kingdom of Soissons or the Domain of Soissons. Lots of particularly confusing phrases to describe it. A visibly autonomous Roman polity, which is, oh my gosh, okay. Whereas what it actually is at the end of the Roman Empire, Gaul is already being divided amongst the Franks, the Burgundians, the Visigoths, the Alemanni. And there is a holdout state in the northeast of what is Roman Gaul. And the Roman Emperor Majoran, or Majorian, who's emperor until 461, he appoints a man named Aegidius as the Magister Militum, the commander of soldiers for Roman Gaul. Now, Roman Gaul by this point has shrunk to this sort of area centered on the city of Soissons, or Pommiers, just close to Soissons today. And so what happens, of course, is that when Odoacer, or the Visigoth, becomes the emperor, he's not recognized by Aegidius, and so you essentially get a split. And they never call themselves emperor. They use the Roman terms of dux and comes, and they essentially establish what they maintain is a Roman province, but they don't recognize the Visigothic emperor of Rome, or the Gothic emperor of Rome. So who are they actually answering to? So essentially it becomes independent, and we get the idea that you get this sort of Roman remnant in Gaul, and it becomes ruled by Aegidius, who dies in 461, succeeded by his son, Syagrius. And Syagrius rules for 20 years quietly, we think, because we don't know much about it. And then in 486 AD, Clovis, the king of the Franks, defeats Syagrius at the Battle of Soissons and takes over the Soissons domain and adds it to the Frankian kingdom, which of course becomes the Kingdom of the Franks, which of course becomes France. Now, that's the very, very loose picture. Most of our information, or in fact, nearly all of our information on the Kingdom of Soissons comes from Gregory of Tours, the history of the Franks. Technically, it's the Decem Libri Historiarum, the 10 books of histories, but better known to us as the histories of the Franks, or the history of the Franks. And in 3 chapters only, in book 2, Gregory gives us the summary of all this. We do also have Sidonius Apollinaris, the Gallo-Roman writer who writes letters to several of the characters, available in a sorry, that's Pliny. That's not, where has he got to? Oh, he's over here. Sidonius Apollinaris over here. So we've got some letters there. Now, there's all sorts of interesting things that happen in this history because of who, what, when, where, why. The interesting aspect of the borders between all of these different territories is something that we're not really particularly sure on. You'll get various different descriptions of the borders and the cities that are controlled by the Kingdom of Soissons or not. And those are really interesting in the sense that if a particular city is under the domination of the Burgundians, the Visigoths, the Alemanni, or the Franks, it really does alter what's happening there at the time. So essentially, the kingdom seems to be between the Seine and the Loire in that part of France, and then there's a conquest of the Burgundian territory as well, and then it all disappears when they're just conquered themselves by the Franks. Now, it's interesting because you've got the idea of, in some sense, Childeric the First, the king of the Franks, is banished by the Franks, possibly back to Thuringia, across the Rhine, and he is replaced by Clovis later. But in the meantime, whilst he's been banished, it would seem as though Aegidius, the leader of the Kingdom of Soissons, is allied with the Franks. And so the idea is the Franks are choosing him to lead them in the absence of a reliable king of the Franks, which is unusual and particularly problematic. We then get the idea of a sort of a concerted effort by the Visigoths to attack the cities controlled by Soissons. And it's tricky because it would seem as though Childeric is also attacking. There's an interpretation that Childeric is defending against the Visigoths, but it actually looks to me more like there's an alliance between some Franks and Aegidius, and then there's an alliance between those Franks who are loyal to Childeric, who basically choose an alliance with the Visigoths, and they attack Soissons. So there's basically a civil war happening within what was the Roman province of Gaul, and eventually it will end up that the Franks defeat all of the other kingdoms, and we get what becomes medieval France. Now, or Merovingian France to start with, the Merovingian Empire. So it's all tied up with that. And that was interesting, but that's not the rabbit hole that I went down. The rabbit hole I went down is the Battle of Soissons. We don't know much about the Battle of Soissons, fought between Clovis and Syagrius, and it's a victory for Clovis. Syagrius flees to Alaric II, the king of the Visigoths, in Toulouse, and Clovis demands he be surrendered, and Alaric II surrenders him and puts him to death. So Clovis is very much the dominant figure in what becomes France at this time, and that's shown in the sources. However, one of the things that I've been writing about recently in my book, and also in a set of rules for war games on Arthur's battles, King Arthur's battles, is that the last battle in Geoffrey of Monmouth's History of King Arthur is this enormous battle in France between Arthur and the Roman Empire. Now, one of the issues with that battle is, of course, that there is no Roman Empire at the time that King Arthur is supposed to have existed in the late 5th or early 6th century. And I wonder, and this was the rabbit hole for me, whether Rome is the Kingdom of Soissons in that sense, and therefore the Battle of Soissons is the battle of this battle in Geoffrey, which actually has Soissons as one of its alternative titles. In that case, Clovis becomes the Arthur figure. Now, in Geoffrey, it's Arthur, pure and simple. There's no metaphor. But I wonder whether he's expanded upon a known battle, the Battle of Soissons, and made it into this Arthurian battle. And there's all sorts of problems with the battle in Geoffrey, because Arthur has an empire which includes Britain, Gaul, Ireland, Iceland, the Orkneys, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, which never existed in the history of empires. Not even the Romans had that kind of empire. And then he comes against the Romans. Now, the Roman Empire in Geoffrey of Monmouth is not the Roman Empire of the 6th century. It doesn't mention Byzantium at all. It mentions a procurator called Hyberius, who's no known individual. But then the empire, the lands of the empire from which the troops are drawn, was never the Roman Empire. There's no names of Roman provinces. We get places that that were peculiarly out of time. We get names of kings from Egyptian history and, the Iliad. So it's a very peculiar description of a battle. But I wonder whether that semi-mythical writing up of a battle did expand upon an original real battle, the Battle of Soissons, between Clovis and Syagrius. And I think that if that's the case, it is a battle between a new king, Clovis, who establishes the Merovingian Empire, and Rome, meaning the last remnant of Roman Gaul in Europe. So it's a fascinating one. There's not a lot more to know. There's archaeology which tells us some things which might relate to that, but other than that, it's very much the last gasp of the Roman Empire in Europe, and they lose after about a 30-year existence to Clovis, king of the Franks. So, Dave, I hope that answers your question at least partially, and that certainly set me on a very deep rabbit hole. Anyway, thanks for joining me for an issue of Ancient Warfare Answers, and I hope you join me again. Thanks. Bye.